Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Welcome to another episode of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller, along with Mike Hightower here in studio. Mike Tolbert is back at the remote studio, and we're delighted to have you with us. And of course, Mike's on Mike brought to you by the History Center and Dr. Alan Bliss, who keeps his staff keeping the lights on and the cameras rolling, and to our donors as well. We thank you very much for your support to keep this program on the air.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
To say that our guest today is a veteran member of the City Council would be a great understatement. Matt Carlucci was first on the council back in 1997.
When he was 12.
That's right. Serving till 94. Then again from 99 to 2003, and finally from 2019 to the present time. His current term ends in 2027, and he has promised his wife Karen that he will not run for another office. In recent Times Union guest column, Matt wrote, "Lately, politics feels more like theater than governance, focused on showmanship rather than statesmanship." Today we want to talk to him about two different things. One is which the attempt of the governor to eliminate property taxes, and then something else that's called Duval DOGE. And Mr. Tolbert, welcome to the program, and kick it off to us.
Thank you, Matt. So good for you to come back and join us again. And first, I want to acknowledge Matt's leadership in proposing an increase in the garbage fee and then fighting like hell to get it passed. I think that was so important to Jacksonville, and his leadership in that was just outstanding. You can always count on the Florida legislature to look for ways to diminish the role of local government and chip away at home rule. And the most recent effort is the suggestion that we eliminate property taxes. I want you to begin by explaining what property taxes are, who pays them, what they fund, and why property taxes are so important to Jacksonville and other local communities.
60% of the general fund is property taxes. And of that 60-some-odd% of property taxes, 57% goes to public safety. So that doesn't leave much ad valorem taxes to be used to leverage other projects. So we have to rely on the state shared sales tax, which is about 12% of the budget. Fuel taxes are included in the sales tax with the state, not the local ones. Utility services tax, that's about 5%. The JEA contribution, that's about $137 million. That's 77.3%. And then if the garbage fee passes on May 27th, that will be 40 to 45 million, and that would be about a 2% part of the budget. So the ad valorem taxes makes up the great majority of our general fund. And when I first saw that the governor and some legislators were proposing to take away property taxes, I just thought, it's like everybody's trying to keep up. It's very disappointing. It looks also political to me. And by the way, I go back to 1987, and I was the youngest guy on the council, and I was very green. And but since then, I've learned a lot on city council, city business. And you take away property taxes, which is our most stable tax that we have, that we can pretty much rely on every year, and also rely on some growth. They're not even saying what they would replace that with.
Right.
So if they don't replace it, then they're defunding the police and fire protection.
I read where eliminating the property tax would create, I want to make sure this number was staggering, it would create a $55 billion, that's with a B, shortfall for local governments throughout Florida. $55 billion.
Yep.
Now that includes school and public safety. The state legislature doesn't have control over property taxes. That's local. So to eliminate the taxes, it would take the voter the voters to approve a referendum, going back to the referendum. My question is this. What does the governor and some of these legislators say that's going to replace that if it's eliminated?
I have not read, and I've kept up with it, of course, I have not read any replacement revenue source suggested. Everybody just supposes sales tax because that's the only other one out there. And by the way, in talking to the council auditor, she said that in the state of Florida, the cities that would be hurt the most by taking away property taxes would be your small towns. And she's right. But Jacksonville, basically our property taxes pay just about all of our public safety. So what are you going to replace that with? The sales tax. And the sales tax can be good or bad. If you have a COVID, you're not going to get much sales tax. Or you have a hurricane. I mean, there's so many, it's so volatile, the sales tax is. And that's not a good way to be able to plan, for future projects in the future of your city.
Right.
I think I read somewhere where they were estimating that our sales tax would have to go up to a minimum of 12%.
It'd be over 12%. Yes. You got it right. But it'd probably be over that.
Yep. If it were to go to the ballot, which it would have to referendum, and you've been involved with leadership on that, the referendum wouldn't be voted until 2026, which would be the governor's election during that time. What should local government be doing now to prepare for that election? That's number one. And more importantly, prepare the possibility of the referendum being approved by 60%. Because if you're talking about doing away with it, so there's two things.
I think that we need to make sure we got a consensus on the council that would oppose such a measure. I wrote a letter, but that's me. I can't speak for the entire council, and we have a lot of council members that right now, because we're so close to different elections, anytime you suggest doing away with any kind of tax, that could be an easy yes vote for people to make. And then the law of unintended consequences comes in. I believe that as that thing moves along, there should be perhaps a special committee or a highlighted committee from Jacksonville. But I think it should also include people from the Civic Council. The reduction of taxes in hurting the advancement of Jacksonville, that's a big deal to the Civic Council this year. That translates into saying, you know what, if you have to raise a mill, 25% of a mill, it's about $25 on your tax bill, but you can do a lot of good things with that. So we would need the Civic Council, and they got the muscle to talk to some of the folks over in Tallahassee, but local government's got to squeak the wheel. And that's what I was trying to do with my
your letter to them.
And I put it on Jax today. I tell you, I like the Jax TDY.
Mm-hmm. That was good.
I have a question probably for Matt and for Mike Tolbert, and I should know this. The question is, if the legislature passes this, they would pass that it would have to be a referendum. So it would be the legislature in the legislation, Mike Tolbert, Matt Carlucci, that would say they would determine the referendum, or would it be determined by local government? I guess since it's being pushed on us, it would be the state, Michael?
It'd be the state, I think, Mike, because, it's a statewide proposal.
Yeah, because they would be eliminating property taxes from the state of Florida.
Okay.
So I believe they would.
I think they should have the privilege of creating their own disaster.
Very well done.
As property values in Florida have increased in recent years, of course, so have property tax revenues, which also means increased spending. And that includes us. Looking at Jacksonville, how much does $1 million property taxes raise in 2025 compared to back in 2019, for instance, before the pandemic? Do we know?
$1 million equals about $100 million.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We're just on the border of breaching a $2 billion total budget. So if 25% would be about $25, 50% would be about $50, and $75 bucks and so forth. look, I'm not for raising taxes, and if we can find efficiencies, but the problem is most of the efficiencies that we would be looking at, it's I like the way Mark Woods told it. It's like looking under the pillowcase, under the cushions on the sofa when you ought to be looking in the damn sofa. We can't grow a great city on the cheap. And this is what concerns me. Our city has got so many things that we are advancing with this administration. You've got the stadium, Mosh, the University of Florida opportunity, the Four Seasons Iguana development. There's another development called Related Development, the CBA, which is the community benefits. And she has to hire 40 more police officers, and we have to pay for their raises, and we have a huge debt to meet in the pension. So, look, if suddenly we're worried about tightening our belt, I get it, I understand that, but we were the ones that voted for all this to pile it on.
Yeah.
I think, if you're going to play, Clarence Suggs, this was one of his sayings, if you're going to play, you got to pay.
That's true. Some of your colleagues are saying that spending has gotten out of hand. You see it firsthand more than we do. Do they have a point?
They seem to vote for it all. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical of my colleagues. I'm really not. There's two ways you can look at city government. You can look at investing, like when we got the garbage fee back in.
Right.
The deficit is supposed to be somewhere maybe around 78 million. When the garbage fee kicks in, that'll be 43 million. So now we're down to a deficit of 35 million. So if you have the guts to raise the revenue, the tax, to pay for some of the things that are going to increase our quality of life, it's going to make Jacksonville better for our young people. And that's the people that I really think of the most, are the young people, because they're looking for a better city for their families, more opportunities. They got kids growing up. And so that's my thought.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that, last week when we talked to Lori Boyer, we talked about possibly over $1 billion for a new jail.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and okay, and so that's another need that we have, but I don't think it's a need within the next 5 years. But it's a popular issue to say we want to get the jail off the river. It's not on the river. There's a long story why it was put there, and it had to be put there. But at the end of the day, it does need to be moved. And I read a pretty fascinating letter to the editor this last Sunday, and where it talked about, instead of just one huge jail, making it like a campus. And for those who may need mental health treatment, we go to this building. Some others that are other issues go to that, and then the hardcore go to a stronger facility.
Yeah, Matt, getting back to the replacing property taxes, in 2006, the legislature did away with taxing intangible property like stocks and bonds. Do you think that's an option to help bring that back, to help pay for the shortfall that property taxes are eliminated?
I don't think it'll be enough. I mean, it'd be some, but it wouldn't be enough. Let's remember something that's interesting. I thought about this because when Governor Martinez was running for governor, and he promised he was going to cut the state budget by some really large amount. As soon as he gets elected, I've met him, he's a nice guy, okay, but he gets talked into taxing services, and that completely blew up. Mm-hmm. And I think when people realize what the elimination of a property tax will do to their community, to their safety, to their quality of life, to their education, and the list goes on, If that's put out there effectively, it'll kill the referendum. And if it doesn't, then somebody's going to have to come up with another idea to fund it.
$55 billion is, if that's that number that we talked about earlier, that's what you'd have to replace.
Well, I think you can be comfortable that this legislature, this Republican governor and legislature is not going to do anything that's going to piss off corporate America in Florida. I don't think they'll do that by going after their profits or anything.
I think that that brings to the point I'm going to go back to. We need the help, and this is the year. As I've had some conversations with John Payton and Dennis Whittle, who is the executive director.
He's been on the show.
Yeah, and their big push this year is for trying to awaken Jacksonville residents that we really are pretty low taxed here. With our peer cities, they're doing more and they're having more success, but they're doing a little more investing than we are.
Right.
And my concern here is if we go into a DOGE and then we try to put 2% of the budget under the line, that's not advancing. That's retreating. And we've got so many great things that are happening. They're not renderings anymore. They're happening. Now, I don't see the city held up. Somebody asked General Patton one time when he was asked to go up on a mountain, his soldiers hadn't had any sleep, and they said, and Patton said, "I'll go up there." And this is just how the story goes anyway. And one of the other generals says, "Well, I thought you'd want to retreat and regroup." And General Patton said, "I don't like paying for the same real estate twice."
Point. Your colleague, Councilman Ron Salem, has formed something he calls Duval DOGE to root out waste in city government. Now, as a reminder to our audience, Mr. Salem is the councilman who led the approval for $800 million for the new stadium, led the charge of the former administration of spending hundreds of $millions on the flawed Lot J proposal. I think there was something called the bread basket.
Bread box loan.
Bread box loans that we'd never heard. And voted against the garbage fee increase to fill the hole for the city reserve. But he says that Mayor Deegan is responsible for an ongoing financial mismanagement. Do you think that Salem is more motivated, what we hear, by his desire to be the next mayor, or by a belief that there's really fiscal mismanagement going on?
Well, Ron is my friend, and one show I was on here, I was kind of critical of Ron. And
he's a politician.
Well, I know, but we
these kind of things.
We watched our boys play baseball together, and I felt that friendship should be mended up. So I want to say that at the start.
All right.
But I think it could be a good exercise. But I think Ron might have been well to put together a committee that was a little more diverse, because there's not one lady on the committee. There's not one Democrat on the committee. And actually the DOGE could be done through the finance hearings that we have anyway. But this could help perhaps efficiencies and find some savings, but it's not going to make up for, I don't know, maybe it will, but I find it hard to believe he's going to come up with $78 million to make up the shortfall, which actually, when the garbage fee passes, will be $35 million. So I kind of feel like I've done my part.
To get in front of Salem's announcement about the Duval DOGE, Mayor Deegan conducted a refresher on 904 Lean. We all have very short memories, but folks, that was a program that she initiated when she first got into office.
Yes, she did.
Almost 2 years ago.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. What can you tell us about 904 Lean? Is that just a slogan, or are we eliminating some of the waste that she was hoping to be able to identify?
Well, it's been an internal program by the administration.
But she doesn't oversee the biggest budget that we have in city government, which is the sheriff's office.
56% of all of our property taxes. So anyway,
Which goes back.
So I felt like it could be a good exercise, but I think he might want to reconsider the number of committee members. And I left the meeting early to be here.
Right.
And there are, I'm sure there's a good number of people that are for it because we're all for efficiency. But at that meeting, I will tell you that it was tough. It was rough. And people just kind of feel like everything's copycatting, from the Trump, DeSantis, all the way down to the school board. And anyway, that's what I think.
Yeah, look, Matt, we're going to change again, but before we get out of here, I have an observation and not a question. Mike Hightower and I were very active in stopping Salem, along with Mayor Curry, from giving Shad Khan millions of tax dollars for Lot J. I want to finish this by reading from a column written by Mark Woods this weekend about Duval DOGE. Quote, "I keep coming back to this, but I think it's worth revisiting, particularly when council members are patting themselves on the back and talking about how they are keepers of fiscal responsibility." Mark continues by writing, quote, "The Lot J deal was one of the most fiscally irresponsible things city leaders have tried to do in recent years." And I think we ought to keep that front and center when somebody like Salem is talking about eliminating financial waste. Matt, thanks for being with us today, and thanks for your long years of service.
Look, we have self-imposed these expenses on ourselves, trying to advance the city, and now we want to tighten our belts. Well, we can do that, but it's not going to be near enough to advance these big projects that would be hugely, powerfully good for Jacksonville and advancing, again, the old saying, quality of life. And anyway.
Thank you, Matt.
And I was one of the 7 who didn't support Lot J.
Yeah, the Magnificent 7, if I remember.
The Lot J 7 is what we called ourselves. Yeah. And Tommy Azuri, God bless him, he was one of those 7.
Next week, speaking of Ron Salem, we invited Councilman Salem to be on Mike's on Mike to discuss the Duval DOGE idea, which he, of course, intends to root out waste and duplication, I think, were the 2 words that he keeps using them. I did get a response from Ron Salem. It was a 2-word response, which was no thanks. So even though we have invited him on here to talk about it and let us hear exactly what he thinks can be done and how it can save us money, he decided he did not want to participate. So with that, we have a couple of questions that we would have asked Ron Salem had he been here next week. Mr. Tolbert, you want to kick this off?
Yeah, my question to Mr. Salem is, since 1968, the City Council Auditor has rooted out government waste and misspending, including the sale of JEA and the $233 million given away to Lot J. You supported both of those scandals and other questionable spending, like funding non-profits run by council members. My question is this: have you lost confidence in the council auditor, and is this your way of trying to abolish the council audit?
Okay. Mr. Hightower.
Councilman Salem, you made it clear that you intend to run for mayor in 2027. Rumors out there. Councilman, your colleague, Councilman Jimmy Peluso, called your DOGE meeting a farce and said it was a publicity stunt and a campaign event. A lot of folks agree. Why are they wrong, and what do you want to do to dispute that?
And I'm going to wrap it up. I have 3 questions for Councilman Salem, as a matter of fact. With President Trump and Elon Musk taking a chainsaw to cutting and eliminating federal programs, wouldn't it make sense to see how much revenue Florida will lose as a result of that? And secondly, Jacksonville may lose that for local programs that are impacted by federal funding. Second, as I mentioned earlier before, is Duval DOGE going to scrutinize the sheriff's budget, especially since it's the largest expenditure in city government, as we have mentioned. And if you're not going to be doing that, my question is, why not? These are actually questions not only for Ron Salmon, but they could also be asked, if you like, from the governor and the president. And thirdly, if there, and this to me was the one that really stuck out. If there is duplication and waste in city government, it certainly did not start with this administration. Where was the council, including during your year as president of the city council, when you approved these previous budgets, when it came to weeding out all of that waste and duplication? And with that, Mr. Sedum, again, we'd like to invite you to be on Mike's on Mike, and we'll be happy to make any Tuesday available to you if you'll consent to be our guest on the show. And with that, thank you all very much. Thank you again, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to the History Center for sponsoring us as always. We appreciate it. Join us next week. I'd like to tell you he would be here next week, but we're not sure yet who's going to be here. So you'll have to tune in and see. Thanks for joining us, and have a good week, everybody.
Y'all take care. Thank you.
The entire Mike's on Mike production team wishes a very happy birthday to one of our senior members, Mr. Mike Hightower, who certainly shows no signs of slowing down.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.